Sarah Thompson had always believed in the magic of Christmas cards. Every December, without fail, she sat at her oak kitchen table in the little craftsman house on Maple Street in Eugene, Oregon, with a stack of red and green envelopes, her favorite fountain pen, and a tin of homemade peppermint bark. She wrote real letters, long ones, recounting the small joys of the year, the first crocus pushing through snow in her garden, the way the Willamette River looked like molten silver at sunset, the new watercolor class she'd started at the community center. She signed each one the same way: "All my love, always, Mom." For 15 years after her divorce from Richard, those cards had been her lifeline to her children. Ethan, the older one, lived in Seattle with his wife Lauren and their 2 boys. Lily, the younger, had settled in Portland with her husband Mark and their little girl. The distance was only 2 or 3 hours by car, but somehow it had stretched into years between visits. Sarah never complained. She told herself they were busy: careers, kids, life. Instead, she sent money. It started small, a check tucked into Ethan's birthday card when he and Lauren were struggling with medical bills after the twins were born premature. Then Lily's maternity leave didn't pay enough, so Sarah covered the gap. When Ethan lost his tech job in the 2018 layoffs, Sarah quietly paid their mortgage for 6 months. When Lily and Mark wanted private preschool for their daughter because the public waitlist was too long, Sarah sent the tuition. She refinanced her paid-off house twice. She stopped contributing to her own retirement account. She gave up the dream of a trip to Italy she'd saved for since Richard left. She sold her mother's antique china on eBay to cover one particularly tight month when both kids called within days of each other. The thank yous dwindled over time. First a phone call, then a text, then just "received, thanks Mom," then nothing. Sarah still sent the Christmas cards every year with generous checks inside. This year, 2025, she wrote them in early November, earlier than usual. Her arthritis had been acting up, and she wanted to be sure they arrived in time. To Ethan and Lauren, she wrote about the new rosebush she'd planted in memory of Grandma Ruth. She told them how proud she was of Ethan's promotion at the new startup. She enclosed a check for $5,000, enough, she hoped, for a family ski trip to Mount Bachelor. To Lily and Mark, she wrote about the watercolor exhibit at the library, where 2 of her paintings had been chosen. She mentioned how much she missed hearing about little Ava's dance recitals. She enclosed $4,000, enough for the new furnace Lily had mentioned was on its last legs. She kissed each envelope, said a small prayer, and dropped them in the blue mailbox at the post office on December 1st. 10 days later, 2 envelopes came back: "Return to sender. Moved. No forwarding address." Sarah stood in her kitchen holding them, the red and green paper looking suddenly garish under the fluorescent light. Her hands trembled as she slit them open. The checks were still inside, uncashed. She called Ethan first. The number rang twice, then went to voicemail. She left a message, light, cheerful, asking if they'd moved and forgotten to tell her. Lily's phone went straight to a generic recording. "The number you have reached is no longer in service." Sarah sat down hard at the table. She tried email, no reply. She messaged Lauren on Facebook. The account was deactivated. Mark's Instagram was gone. It was as if both families had vanished. She drove to Portland the next weekend. Lily's little blue house on Alberta Street had a for rent sign in the yard. The neighbors, a young couple with a toddler, said the family had moved suddenly in October. Something about a job in California, the woman offered, but she didn't know where. She drove north to Seattle. Ethan's townhouse in Fremont was occupied by new people, a tech couple with a Tesla in the driveway. They'd bought it in September, closed quickly, cash offer. Sarah stood on the sidewalk in the rain, staring at the house that still had the same wind chimes she'd given them for their 5th anniversary. They hadn't told her they were moving. They hadn't told her anything. Christmas came and went quietly. Sarah put up her little tree, just 4 feet tall now, easier to manage alone. She baked peppermint bark and ate most of it herself while watching old movies. No one called. No one texted "Merry Christmas."
In January, she hired a private investigator. His name was Tom Reyes, a retired Eugene police detective who worked out of a small office downtown. He was kind but blunt. "Mrs. Thompson, people don't just disappear unless they want to, especially not with kids in school." He found them in less than a week.
Ethan, Lauren, and the boys were living in a gated community in Scottsdale, Arizona. Big house, pool, new Lexus in the driveway. Ethan had started a new company, some kind of AI consulting firm, doing well from what Tom could see. Lily, Mark, and Ava were in San Diego, Ocean View Condo. Mark had taken a senior position at a biotech firm, private school for Ava, new Range Rover. Neither had filed a change of address with the post office. Both had blocked Sarah's phone number. Tom handed her the report and the photos. "I'm sorry, ma'am." Sarah paid him in cash from the envelope she kept in her freezer. She didn't cry until she got home. Then she cried for 3 days straight. In February, she stopped the automatic deposits she'd been making into their accounts for emergencies. She closed the joint savings account she'd kept open for the grandchildren. She changed her phone number. She didn't tell anyone what she was doing. Spring came early that year. The crocuses bloomed purple and gold in her front yard. Sarah joined a grief support group at the senior center, not for Richard's leaving, but for the loss of her children while they were still alive. She started painting again, really painting. Not just pretty landscapes, but raw, emotional pieces. Dark storms over empty houses, lone figures standing at gates that wouldn't open. One of her paintings won a regional award. The local paper did a small story. Local artist finds healing through loss. Summer brought heat and long evenings on her porch swing. Sarah read books she'd meant to read for years. She took a road trip to the Oregon coast by herself, stayed in a little cabin in Yachits, walked the beach every morning collecting agates. She didn't check her old email anymore. In September, a letter came. No return address, postmarked Scottsdale, Arizona. Sarah's heart hammered as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of heavy cream paper. "Mom, we need to talk. Things have been difficult. The boys keep asking about you. Can we come visit for Thanksgiving? We'll pay for our own flights. Love, Ethan." No apology, no explanation. Sarah read it 3 times, then folded it neatly and put it in the drawer with her watercolor brushes. She didn't reply. October brought rain and the smell of wood smoke. Sarah's roses bloomed one last time before frost. She harvested the last of her tomatoes, made sauce, canned it in shiny jars lined up like soldiers on her counter. Another letter came, this one from Lily. "Mom, Ava drew a picture of you at school for Grandparents' Day and cried when she realized you weren't coming. Mark's job isn't as secure as we thought. The condo fees here are insane. We're thinking of moving back to the Northwest. Could we stay with you for a little while, just until we get on our feet? We miss you. Love, Lily." Sarah read it on the porch while drinking tea. A crow landed on her railing, cocked its head, cawed once. She burned the letter in her fireplace that night. Thanksgiving came. Sarah cooked a small turkey breast, made stuffing from her mother's recipe, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce from fresh berries. She set the table for one, with her good china. At 2 p.m., her doorbell rang. She opened it to find Ethan, Lauren, and the twins standing on her porch. The boys were taller, almost teenagers now. They looked tanned, well-dressed. Ethan held a bottle of wine. Lauren clutched a store-bought pie. "Mom," Ethan said, smiling too brightly, "we're here." Sarah looked at them for a long moment. "I didn't invite you," she said quietly. Ethan's smile faltered. "But we wrote. We thought you thought wrong."
Lauren stepped forward. "Sarah, please, the boys wanted to see their grandmother." One of the twins, Sarah couldn't remember which was which anymore, looked up at her with big eyes. "Grandma, don't you have any Christmas decorations up yet? It's almost December." Sarah felt something twist inside her chest. It's Thanksgiving, she said, and no, I don't put them up anymore. Ethan tried again. Mom, we've had a tough year. The business, it didn't work out like we planned. We lost the house in Scottsdale. We're staying in a hotel right now. Sarah looked at their new coats, their expensive shoes, the Rolex that hadn't been there before. I'm sorry to hear that, she said, and meant it. She was sorry for the children she'd raised, for the love that had somehow turned into transaction. But she didn't move from the doorway. Can we come in? Asked Lauren. Just for dinner. Sarah looked past them to the street where a new SUV was parked, rental plates. No, she said. I'm expecting company. It was a lie, but it felt true. Ethan's face hardened. Mom, you can't just... I can, Sarah said. Her voice was steady. I did the math, Ethan. Over 15 years, I sent you and your sister more than $400,000. I have the bank statements. I sold things that belonged to your grandmother. I worked nights cleaning offices when you were in college, and you moved without telling me. You blocked my number. You let me think something terrible had happened. The twins shifted uncomfortably. Lauren tried tears. We were ashamed. We made mistakes. Sarah looked at her grandson, really looked at him, for the first time in years. I'm sorry you're having a hard time, she said to the boy, but your parents made choices, and so have I. She closed the door gently but firmly. She leaned against it for a long moment, listening to their muffled voices on the porch, then footsteps retreating. She went back to her turkey dinner and ate every bite. Christmas came again. Sarah put up her little tree, she strung lights along her porch for the first time in years. She baked peppermint bark and gave most of it away to neighbors. On December 23rd, the anniversary of when the cards had come back, she received a package. No return address, postmarked San Diego. Inside was every Christmas card she'd sent Lily for the past 5 years. Unopened, checks still inside. There was a note in Lily's handwriting. We're coming home. We need you. Sarah looked at the cards for a long time. Then she carried them to her fireplace. One by one, she fed them to the flames. The checks curled and blackened. The greetings turned to ash. She watched until the last ember died. Then she went to her studio and started a new painting. A woman standing on a porch in the snow, arms open to the night sky. Behind her, a warm house glowing with lights. In front of her, an empty street stretching into darkness. She titled it, The Space I Kept. In January, she sold the house on Maple Street. She bought a small cottage on the coast near Yachits, the one she'd stayed in during her solo trip. Ocean view, garden space, a studio with northern light. She moved in March when the daffodils were blooming. Her new neighbors were artists, retirees, people who'd chosen simpler lives. They invited her to potlucks and beach walks. She said yes more often than no. The grandchildren never came to visit at first. Neither did Ethan or Lily. Sometimes, late at night, Sarah would check her phone, old habit, and see missed calls from unknown numbers, Arizona area codes, California. She never called back. Years passed.
Sarah's paintings began to sell. Not just locally, in galleries in Portland, Seattle, even San Francisco. Critics wrote about the quiet power in her work, the way she captured absence. She traveled to Italy at 75, spent a month painting in Tuscany, sent postcards to her friends back home. At 80, she published a small book of her paintings and writings, called it Return to Sender. It sold out its first printing. One December morning, when she was 82, a letter came to her cottage, forwarded from her old address in Eugene. Cream envelope, familiar handwriting, younger, shakier. She opened it on her deck, watching waves crash against the rocks below. Sarah's paintings began to sell. Not just locally, in galleries in Portland, Seattle, even San Francisco. Critics wrote about the quiet power in her work, the way she captured absence. She traveled to Italy at 75, spent a month painting in Tuscany, sent postcards to her friends back home. At 80, she published a small book of her paintings and writings, called it Return to Sender. It sold out its first printing. One December morning, when she was 82, a letter came to her cottage, forwarded from her old address in Eugene. Cream envelope, familiar handwriting, younger, shakier. She opened it on her deck, watching waves crash against the rocks below. Grandma, my name is Ava. I'm 16 now. Mom finally told me about you, about everything. I found your book at the library. Your paintings made me cry. I'm sorry for what my parents did. I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I wanted you to know I think about you, and I love you, even though I barely remember you. If you ever want to meet, I'll come alone, no strings. Love, Ava. Sarah read it 3 times. Then she went inside and found a blank Christmas card, one of the few she still kept. She wrote a long letter about her garden, about the whales she'd seen migrating last week, about the painting she was working on, a girl standing at the edge of the sea, looking towards something she couldn't yet see. She enclosed a recent photo of herself, silver hair, paint-stained fingers, smiling in front of her cottage. She signed it, "All my love, always, Grandma Sarah." She mailed it the next day. 3 weeks later, on a cold January morning, a knock came to her door. Sarah opened it to find a tall girl with Lily's eyes and dark hair standing alone on her porch, backpack, nervous smile. "Hi," the girl said. "I'm Ava." Sarah stepped back. "Come in," she said. "I just made peppermint bark." They sat by the fire and talked until the sun went down. Ava stayed for a week. The first summer Ava came, she was 16, tall and awkward with Lily's dark curls and a cautious politeness that broke Sarah's heart a little. She arrived on a Greyhound from San Diego, backpack slung over one shoulder, clutching a folded piece of paper with Sarah's address written in her own careful handwriting. Sarah met her at the tiny Yachats bus stop, waving from her old Subaru. When Ava stepped off, they stood there for a moment, just looking, before Sarah opened her arms. Ava hesitated, then stepped in. She smelled like bus seats and teenage shampoo. Sarah held her longer than Ava expected. The cottage was small. 2 bedrooms, a combined living kitchen area with windows facing the ocean, and the studio Sarah had added on the back. Ava's room had a slanted ceiling, a twin bed with a quilt Sarah had made from old flour sack fabric, and a window that looked straight out at the waves. That first week was quiet. They tiptoed around each other. Ava helped with meals, chopping vegetables with careful precision, asking permission before using anything in the kitchen. Sarah taught her how to make peppermint bark the old way, with real peppermint oil and dark chocolate. They walked the beach every morning, collecting agates and sea glass in silence at first, then in small bursts of conversation. Ava asked about the paintings on the walls. Sarah told stories behind each one, never mentioning the pain that had birthed them. Ava listened wide-eyed when Sarah talked about growing up in Georgia, about meeting her grandfather Robert at the Dairy Queen, about the Milltown Christmases with one shared gift. One evening, as they sat on the deck watching the sun sink into the Pacific, Ava finally asked the question that had been hovering. "Why didn't my mom ever bring me here before?" Sarah took a slow sip of tea. "Because your mom and I lost our way with each other," she said. "It happens sometimes. People get scared or proud or busy, and they forget how to find their way back." Ava nodded like she understood more than a 16-year-old should. That night, Sarah heard her crying quietly in the guest room. She didn't go in. Some tears need privacy. The second week loosened them. Ava started waking early to walk the beach alone, coming back with pockets full of treasures. She asked if she could try painting. Sarah set her up in the studio with a small canvas and acrylics. Ava painted the ocean, wild, stormy, angry strokes of blue and gray. When she showed it to Sarah, her chin lifted defiantly. She said, "It's how I feel sometimes." Sarah only said, "It's beautiful and honest." They drove up the coast to Newport for the day. ate clam chowder at Moe's, visited the aquarium where Ava pressed her face to the glass of the jellyfish tank like a little kid. On the way home, Ava asked if they could stop at a bookstore. She bought a worn copy of Little Women with her own money from babysitting back home. That night, she read aloud to Sarah on the deck, her voice gaining confidence with every page. When the week ended, Ava hugged Sarah so tightly at the bus stop that Sarah felt her ribs creak. "I'll come back next summer," Ava whispered, "if that's okay." Sarah kissed the top of her curly head. "It's more than okay." The next summer, Ava was 17, taller, more sure of herself. She flew this time, alone, on a ticket Sarah bought without discussion. She arrived with a duffel bag and a sketchbook already half filled. This time, there was no tiptoeing. Ava claimed the guest room like it was hers, spread her clothes across the quilt, pinned sketches to the wall with thumbtacks. She woke Sarah with coffee made just the way she liked it, strong, 1 sugar, splash of cream. They fell into a rhythm: morning beach walks, afternoons in the studio, evenings reading or watching old movies on Sarah's small TV. Ava painted more, better now. Sarah taught her watercolor techniques, how to let the pigment bleed just enough. They painted side by side in the studio, classical music on the radio, gulls crying outside. One afternoon, Ava asked about her grandfather, Robert. Sarah pulled out the old photo albums, the ones she'd almost thrown away after the divorce. They sat on the living room floor turning pages. Robert in uniform, Sarah pregnant with Ethan, Christmas mornings with tinsel and bad 1980s hair. Ava traced her finger over a photo of baby Lily in Sarah's arms. "She looks like me," Ava said softly. "She does. You have her eyes, and her stubborn chin." Ava laughed. "Mom says I have your stubbornness." Sarah smiled. "Good, you'll need it." That summer, Ava started asking harder questions. "Why did they move without telling you?" Sarah answered honestly, without bitterness. About the money, about feeling used, about the returned cards, about choosing herself. Ava listened without interrupting, then said, "That's really sad, for all of you." Sarah nodded. "It is." Near the end of the visit, Ava's cousin Jacob, Ethan's older twin, texted her. He was 18 now, working a summer job in Seattle. Could he come down for a few days too? Sarah said yes before Ava even finished asking. Jacob arrived shy and quiet, all long limbs and awkward hugs. The cottage felt suddenly full. Teenagers sprawled on the couch, dishes piling up, and laughter echoing off the walls in a way it hadn't in decades. They cooked spaghetti for dinner, sauce splattering everywhere. Jacob turned out to be a good cook. His mother had made him learn, he said with an eye roll. Ava and Jacob stayed up late talking on the deck, while Sarah pretended to sleep. One night, Sarah overheard them. "Do you think Grandma's mad at our parents?" Jacob asked. "I think she's done. Not mad, just done waiting." Jacob was quiet for a long time. "Dad never talks about her, like she died or something." Ava's voice was fierce. "That's on him, not on her." The next summer, Ava was 18, college applications looming. She brought her portfolio for Sarah to critique. They spent hours in the studio, Sarah offering gentle suggestions while Ava soaked them up like a sponge. Jacob came again, for the whole month this time. He'd been accepted to Oregon State, engineering. He wanted to be close enough to visit, he said. They turned the cottage into summer camp, bonfires on the beach, legal ones with permits, hiking the trails at Cape Perpetua, teaching themselves to make sourdough from a starter Sarah had kept alive for 20 years. Ava started dating a local boy who worked at the coffee cart in town, sweet kid named Mateo with a skateboard and dreams of marine biology. Sarah liked him. He treated Ava with respect and ate 3 helpings of everything she cooked.
One evening, the four of them, Sarah, Ava, Jacob, and Mateo, sat around the fire pit roasting marshmallows. The kids were talking about college, futures, possibilities. Sarah looked at their young faces glowing in the firelight and felt something loosen in her chest that she hadn't realized was still knotted. Later, when the boys had gone inside, Ava stayed with Sarah. "I got into Reed," she said quietly. "Early decision, art program." Sarah's eyes filled. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful."
"I'm going to study painting. Like you." Sarah couldn't speak for a moment. Ava reached over and took her hand. "I want to be like you when I grow up. Not my mom. You." Sarah squeezed her fingers. "Just be you. That's more than enough." The summers kept coming. Ava at 19 bringing her first serious boyfriend, not Mateo, someone from Reed. Jacob at 20 bringing his girlfriend, a quiet biology major who loved Sarah's garden. The cottage garden expanded, raised beds built by Jacob's strong young hands, roses and lavender and herbs spilling over the edges. Ava painted murals on the fence, ocean scenes, whales breaching, a girl with silver hair standing at the edge of the sea. They established traditions. The first night always spaghetti with Sarah's sauce, the last night always peppermint bark and reading aloud from whatever book Ava had brought. Some summers there were tears. Ava's first big heartbreak, Jacob's father pressuring him to transfer to a better school closer to Arizona. Sarah listened, offered tea and tissues, and the kind of steady presence she'd once given her own children. One summer, when Ava was 21, she asked if she could bring a friend who had nowhere to go for break, a trans kid from school whose family had cut them off. Sarah said, of course. The cottage stretched to fit one more. By then, the guest room was officially Ava's room, her sketches permanently pinned to the walls, her favorite mug in the cupboard, her old overalls hanging in the closet for painting days. Jacob graduated and got a job in Corvallis, close enough for weekend visits year-round. He brought his dog sometimes, a goofy golden retriever named Max, who slept on Sarah's feet. Ava graduated from Reed at 22 with honors. Her senior show was titled Return to Sender, a series of paintings about absence, inheritance, and chosen family. Sarah flew up for the opening. Ava's pieces sold out on the first night. That summer, Ava stayed the whole 3 months. She worked part-time at the local gallery, saved money for graduate school applications. One August evening, they were walking the beach at sunset, just the two of them like that very first summer. Ava stopped and looked at Sarah. "I'm applying to MFA programs," she said, "all over. But wherever I go, this will always be home. You will always be home." Sarah felt the wind catch in her throat. "You've given me back something I thought was gone forever," she said. Ava hugged her hard, face buried in Sarah's shoulder like she was 16 again. "No," Ava whispered. "You gave it to me first." The summers kept coming, year after year. The cottage filled with young voices, young dreams, young love. It filled with art supplies and dog hair and the smell of sourdough rising. It filled with chosen family, the kind you build when the one you were born into breaks. Ethan and Lily never came. Sarah never asked Ava or Jacob to choose sides. She never asked them to carry messages or explain. Some doors once closed stay closed, but others, unexpected ones, open when you least expect them. And sometimes the Christmas card that comes back isn't the one you sent. It's the one you finally allow yourself to receive.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring content.